Hey everyone, this is Michael. I wanted to kind of post a brief video on the subject of spiritual vibration, particularly what we sometimes hear explained as higher vibration. There was a post that went up in our group this morning that actually kind of initiated some really interesting conversation around vibration and how there's this concept in a lot of spiritual circles now about how raising our vibration or kind of trying to live at a higher vibration. And I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit, okay? Just to kind of give some clarity, hopefully. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you who will watch this video will have seen some of the other videos that I posted in the group. Just a little bit of extra info on me, because I know you see videos and people, people are all over the internet, right? And people could really pretty much say anything they wanted to. But to give you a little bit of info on me, um, I've actually been studying really for about 30 years now. It's actually 30 years, I think, this year. I've actually been studying a student of varying schools of mysticism and the occult. Um, I always tell people that I am forever a student. I think all of us always are. We are always students. But I've also initiated in several spiritual paths, and I've been involved long enough to be recognized as a teacher, and in some traditions, what they would maybe refer to as a high priest or an elder. And so because of that, I do teach people and I do share much of what I have learned over the years. Again, I do not consider myself a master of anything. I don't think anybody ever can be, and I certainly I don't know that we should ever really strive for that. But anyway, but that's just a few bit of or a bit of information on me, okay, and really kind of where I'm coming from with some of these videos that I've been posting, right? My only agenda in posting these videos and sharing this information with you is really just to do just that, just to share the information and experience. So that hopefully some of it will speak to you. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's talk about vibration. Okay, I have some notes here in case you guys see my eyes moving back and forth. There's a lot of information around this, and I wanted to make sure that I put this forward as clearly as I could and as quickly as I could. Okay, so let's talk about vibration. Okay, um, we hear this word a lot in modern spirituality, right? But what does it really mean? What does it mean when we associate vibration to spiritual practice? Okay, to kind of start a discussion on that, what I want to do first is I want to kind of talk a little bit about science. Okay, the study of physics, and particularly more recently, quantum physics, quantum science, has confirmed that what a lot of mystics were telling us centuries ago is actually true. We know now that all that exists is really basically energy, everything, right? When the energy of whatever it is vibrates, the way that it manifests is changed. Okay. To kind of elaborate on that a little bit, basically what I would have to say is that the things that we perceive to be solid, my body, the wall next to me, the rock on the ground when we go outside, the things that we perceive to be solid are also comprised of molecular energy that is set to a particular vibration, right? Um, Things that are intangible, right? Things that are like the air. There are oxygen molecules in the air, right, that we breathe. Um, those are all energy in some form. Everything is energy. So what we see with this, okay, and this is still something that is being confirmed or has yet to be confirmed by science, I believe. But again, you'll find in very old schools of mystical thought that things that are comprised of energy that are perceived to be solid will vibrate at a particularly high vibration. There's an excitement that happens with those molecules, that energy, where they are believed to group or to vibrate in a way that would, to us, be perceived as a tangible physical presence, right? Things you can touch, right? Things that have form. Um, Okay, things that would be intangible when we look at things like oxygen or gases, like you think about like gases, you know, those are things that would have a lower vibration on a purely quantum scientific level. Those would be things that would have a lower vibration, right? That's why they lack tangible form, physical form, right? Um, Now let's talk a little bit about, because I said a couple of things there, right? The physical things that we perceive would have a lower, or excuse me, a higher vibration, right? Um, Things that would be intangible, things like oxygen or gas, or maybe even perhaps the spirit, thought, right? Things that would be intangible are believed to have a lower vibration. Okay? Now, higher vibration versus lower vibration, no difference. One is not better than the other. You know, we have this understanding, or this idea, many of us, that things that would be higher are somehow better, and that is unfortunately that is not true. That is not true. Um, Lower vibration is not a bad or negative thing. A lower vibration does not mean that something is bad or negative. Okay. Um, Again, going back to some spiritual beliefs, some spiritual circles, again, there's this idea that we should be always trying to raise our vibration. Okay. If you look at the concept of something like that, in the way that a mystic or a magician, not like a stage magician, card trick magician, but like an actual magician, a high magic practitioner or a hermeticist, or even a witch or a shaman of some kind. Um, um, it isn't really possible for us to raise our vibration. The reason for this basically is because in doing this, we would ultimately destroy the physical form that we inhabit, right? We have to stay within a certain vibration of energy to be able to sustain this form, to be able to sustain this body. We can't raise our vibration beyond a certain level. Otherwise, we would ultimately see dissolution or destruction of our physical form. I apologize. There's a police siren or fire truck outside. Hopefully, you can hear me over that noise. So the idea that higher vibrations are somehow better is both scientifically false and spiritually superficial. Okay, it's something that we really probably need to be moving away from more and more if we want to be serious and have integrity in our spirituality. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Okay, let's talk about what gives things vibration. Okay, the easy and also not so easy answer is consciousness. Okay, consciousness. Okay, the animating influence of all that exists is consciousness. Okay. Now, that can be a tricky word to hear sometimes because we hear words like consciousness and we're like, well, I mean, I know what the definition of that word is if I pull out a dictionary, but what does that really mean in realms of the spiritual, right? And to be clear on that, or to clarify that a little bit, I want to say that consciousness, as I'm referring to it today, is not the mortally limited consciousness that we possess as humans. Okay. Many old systems, hermeticism, whatever it may be, many old, what we ascribe to ancient belief or tradition, traditional practices will say that uh, because we live in a human form, because we have not just, and we're not just humans, right? I mean, there's a soul, right? There's a soul connected to this, right? And a higher form of consciousness as well. But because of the way that we incarnate into physical form, because of the way that we are limited in, at least in some sense, by our physical, our animal, our physical thinking brain, that because of that we are ultimately limited in the way that we are able to completely perceive really the enormity, the entirety of all that is out there, right? At least at our current point of evolution, right? I hope that all of us get to a point someday where we won't have that limitation. But because of that, okay, when we talk about consciousness, at least human consciousness, okay, that is believed to be a mortally, physically, humanly limited form of consciousness. Okay, the consciousness that we see setting things to vibration, the conscious things that we see, or the consciousness that we talk about that gives energy vibration, Uh, Everything, the entire universe, all that is energy set to vibration. Vibration structured and set by consciousness. Okay, this is limitless. This is the limitless and ancient intelligence of the universe. Okay, in some belief systems, this would maybe be what some people would call God, or spirit, or source, or again maybe just universe, goddess. Whatever your word is, doesn't really matter, because they're all true. They're all true. They're all applicable. Um, that is the limitless, the primal, the ancient intelligence of the universe, of all that is, the all. Okay, and again, it's a very, very hermetic concept, the all. Okay, but it is this form of consciousness that gives all energy structure, through vibration, and through that vibration, all things are given order. Okay, this is a very simplified way of putting this. Okay, there's a lot more to some of these ideas. Okay, I'm kind of giving you like the Cliff Notes version. If you want to learn more about this, particularly hermetic concepts of consciousness and vibration and even universal law, I would recommend that you maybe go out and pick up a copy of a book called The Kybalion. The name is spelled, or title, excuse me, is spelled Kybalion. And there actually is a lot of information about the Kybalion out there for free online. You can go and you can do some research into that if you wish. Um, it's a bit of a dry read. It's not necessarily an exciting book to read, not unless you're really into like esoteric, mysticism, these kinds of things. But it does have a lot of good information in there. At least something that would be worth considering as you're looking at furthering your own spiritual practice. Anyway, let's get back to the idea of expanding or raising one's vibration. Okay, I want to ask those of you who ultimately watch this video to consider the possibility of alternate dimensions of existence. Okay, I know it sounds like I'm really switching gears on that one. Okay, but these things, they do connect. Okay, so just bear with me. Okay, the possibility of alternate dimensions of existence. Okay. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with that. We read a lot about different dimensions in our science fiction, these kinds of things. But there is, in a lot of very old mystical systems, some real thought put into this, like some real belief in these things. And to be clear, when we talk about alternate dimensions, we're not talking about other worlds. What we're really talking about in the context of vibration is just different vibrations that overlap our own. There's a belief, again, in many spiritual paths, that we are multidimensional beings. This person you are looking at today, you, whoever it is that may be sitting around you right now, the people in your life, that we are all multidimensional beings. That our souls, not necessarily our physical bodies, but our souls span not just this dimension, not just the physical world we live in, right? This physical dimension that we perceive around us right now, but that we as souls expand across many different dimensions. Um, Again, this is actually something that our study, modern quantum science, is kind of confirming some of this for us, right? With all of the work that's being done with things like the God particle, and just within that branch of science, they're actually kind of very slowly confirming some of this to be true. And so again, it's definitely worth considering, right? But anyway, but how do we see how something like a concept like an alternate dimension or an overlapping dimension, uh, how does that relate to vibration, right? Well, the idea is that each of these dimensions is set to a different vibration, right? Think of it almost like the frequencies that you would find on an old radio, right? Where we see, like this, you'd flip the dial. You used to flip the dial, right? I know everything's different now. Maybe showing my age a little bit, but you'd flip the dial, and it would go through to a different radio frequency, right? And all of a sudden, the information, the sound, what you were hearing would be different, right? This is really kind of a good way to kind of explain, or more clearly explain what we're talking about right now, right? Um, uh, each dimension is set to a different vibration. Okay, and again, that vibration is determined by universal consciousness, right? That's the energy that's set into vibration, or what sets that energy into vibration. Because of this, and because of this idea or this belief that some part of our soul, who we are as a being, not just this, but who we are entirely as a being, as a soul, because of the belief that some part of our soul already exists across many different dimensions, we're already existing at all vibration, right? Again, just to repeat that, we are already existing at all vibrations, okay, in some form. Okay, you could think of it maybe as, like there's like you take the whole of who you are, and like there's a tiny piece of you over here, and a tiny piece of you over here, and a tiny piece of you over here. But because those are all pieces of you, you're all still in one form, right? And so we don't, fortunately, we don't physically feel the manifestation of being spread across multiple realms of dimension or multiple vibrations of energy, because I can't even imagine what that would be like for us. Probably not very good. But anyway. Um, but we are already existing in all vibrations, which means we, again, are multidimensional beings. Because of this, we really can't get higher. We can't vibrate higher than we already do. We also really can't get any lower, right? We're already spanning the range of vibration that sustains our being, not just this life, but the totality of our being, okay? Um, for the sake of argument, let's talk a little bit about how one could raise their vibration. Okay, through again particular types of spiritual practice, it is possible for us to raise our level of consciousness. Okay, this is not vibration. Remember, consciousness is the universal intelligence. Okay, and in this form, it is our limited human intelligence, right? That soul component of our being, the intelligence of the soul, that is again still a bit limited in human form or in the human incarnation, right? But it is possible for us to temporarily raise our level of consciousness, not vibration. Those are different things. Consciousness uh, shapes energy into form through vibration, right? They're different things. Okay, so we can raise our level of consciousness, okay, which is not raising vibration, but is actually putting us into a deeper connection with the universal intelligence, with the big consciousness, right? That kind of influences everything, right? That's really kind of what's happening in those situations, okay? And we absolutely, we can do this. We have stories. Many of us in our spiritual practices, we have stories, things that we have seen documented that would confirm that people had actually been able to achieve this. They had, even for just a moment, they had experienced maybe like a small epiphany or enlightenment, right? Enlightenment is something that many people are seeking, and I'm not entirely sure why. We all will get it at some point. It's bound to happen, so we really probably don't need to fight too hard for it. But we can connect in a deeper level to that universal intelligence that is both within us and also without us. Um, but again, that has to be a brief or a very temporary thing. Okay. What happens when we do this, when we find a means to raise our consciousness, right? And there are lots of ways to do this, right? Some people do this through trance work. Some people do this with um, yogic processes. Some people do this through, really deep, intense meditation. Some people use drugs and illicit substances for this. Those are all valid ways to raise consciousness, right? If depending on what you're comfortable with. Um, but um, but what's happening as a result of that, whatever the medium, whatever the process may be, is that we are directing that one piece of our soul um, toward an energetic vibration that aligns to a different dimension, right? That would be a dimension that would be less inhibited or less limited by the material world that we inhabit, right? It gives us the ability to kind of check out of this mortal life that can, for many of us, sometimes be again, a bit limiting, right? At least as it would relate to the spiritual work, right? And so that's what's happening, is we're directing our soul, our intent, to another component of our being that would probably live a little more on one of those different energetic or dimensional vibrations, right? That's really kind of what's happening in those moments. Okay. Um, this is actually something that most of us will do naturally. Whether it be in dream time, or again, whether it maybe be through some of those other methods that I just, kind of listed, that this is something that all of us actually have access to. Um, but it's not a state that we can live in. We can't live in this state, and it's kind of foolish and unfortunate for us to try. Those who do try to constantly live in that higher vibration, that higher level, usually see a consequence to that in their physical existence. They usually see in their physical existence suffer. The details of their mortal human life begin to unravel. I'm sure if many of you have traveled with like groups of people who are kind of really devoted to spiritual work, people who spend a lot of time on their spiritual work. All of you, I'm sure, have had some experience, some connection with somebody who is, really seems really spiritually awakened, or somebody who really seems to really be doing on a spiritual level a lot of really good work. And then you find out that they haven't paid their bills, and they're going to lose their homes, or their relationships are in shambles, or their children don't speak with them. And those are all unfortunately very, very realistic. These could happen to anybody, kinds of situations, right? But these appear to be things that are a bit more common to people who are constantly seeking that higher vibration, right? It's like they detach from the world around them. And the reason for this is because they've made it clear to the universal consciousness that that really gives structure to all that exists, that they really no longer wish to remain within this lifetime. They really no longer wish to remain the entirety of their being, or of their mortal, logical thinking. They really don't want to be here anymore. Is kind of the dimension that we inhabit, right? This is again something that happens to souls that we believe have ascended. You talk about figures like Buddha, Muhammad, Christ, Jesus Christ. We have these stories, and those are just three. There are so many others, but those are three of the big ones that we often hear, at least in association with Abrahamic religions or belief. So we hear about these stories about these souls, these human men, who were able to spiritually ascend, and become something other, right? What has happened in each of those stories, if you read those things, is that they've chosen, through the work that they have done, or through just something that they've accomplished, right? They've chosen to remove themselves almost completely from the world that we as humans inhabit, so that they can now more fully dwell in another dimension, right? This phenomenon that we associate with, or we call ascension, that we give to or associate with figures like Buddha, Christ, Muhammad. I mean, again, there are so many. This is actually again kind of a natural process. This is something that happens to us all at death, right? At death we transcend. We ascend from this form into something else, right? Something else, right? Even regardless of your spiritual belief, we can all agree on that, right? That if we are spiritual in nature, that if we have a belief in some sort of higher process, we know that there's something after this lifetime, right? We ascend, we move from this into something else. So it can happen to all of us, and will happen to all of us at that point in our lives. This is also something that we see happen when we inhabit. Not inhabit, when we travel, when we temporarily move through places like the astral realm. Those of you who perhaps do astral travel work, or astral projection, as some people would call it, when you send that piece of yourself out and into whatever else is out there, right? That's what's happening. You are directing some component of your soul, the energy that you are, from this dimension into another dimension. Right, that's what's happening. That part of you is vibrating now at a different level, temporarily, right? But that's what's happening. Um, so what I usually tell people, moving on, is that when you, um, unless you are ready to abandon your life here in the human world, to really see your mortal life really kind of suffer, in a sense, and I know that that's a very extreme way perhaps to put that, but this is ultimately, this is kind of what happens because this is what we ask for. Unless you are ready to abandon your life as you know it and as you appreciate it, whether you consider it a good life or a bad life, whatever, it's still your life, right? Um, Unless you're ready to abandon this, you really don't want to try to live in a single different vibration all the time. You really don't want to try to constantly be chasing a higher vibration. Um, you know, Consciousness, that universal consciousness, right? Not the human one, but the universal consciousness, God, universe, source, again, whatever you may call it, listens to us. And that power will work with us to move us from our current existence in this dimension if we continually tell it that that's what we want, right? When we're constantly, saying, I want to raise my vibration, I just need to raise my vibration, oh, high vibrations, this is what we're always chasing. There are spiritual powers out there that are going to hear that and go, really? Well, this is an abundant universe, and our job here is to kind of make sure that we help you progress in the way that you need to. And if this is really what you want, then okay, we'll help you make that happen, right? And then they work to remove us, or to move us, perhaps I should say, from our current dimension, our current existence, because that's what we've told them we want, okay? Now that's what we want, right? But because we are limited in our understanding, our human consciousness is limited again. We can't really, on a logical level, really, I think, fully comprehend what that means when we ask for something like that, right? We really can't know completely what is out, what else is out there, or where we might potentially end up, or what our existence would be like when this is over, right? We have ideas, we have belief, right? We have belief. We think we kind of know what's going on, but at the end of the day, which one of us can ever really be 100% on that, right? And so because of that, when we tell these higher powers that we want to reach a higher vibration, that we need to raise our vibration, and they start to work with us to make that happen, we don't have control over how that happens. The way that that change happens is beyond our control. And because of that, um, that change can often prove to be painful and much more messy and difficult than it needs to be. You know, um, I've seen a good number of people really destroy their lives in the pursuit of a higher vibration. The world around them really just falls apart, and they ultimately also end up kind of suffering on a deeper personal level. I know many of them who also have, with time, they've progressed to serious mental health issues, physical health issues. That's one of the ways that universal consciousness can help us move from this plane to another, right? Is it brings about death. Right. So, and again, that's a fairly extreme way to explain that, or an extreme example, perhaps. But these are the things that I have seen, and and things that I think are certainly possible for all of us. Right. It's that old saying, be careful what you ask for. Right. Um, so again, because of all of that, we don't want to try to seek a higher vibration. We can't. We can't live at a higher vibration. Living in a higher vibration all the time is not healthy. It's something we really shouldn't be trying to force, right? And again, higher vibrations are not better or more positive, okay? They are just the manifestation of consciousness and dimensional order. That's all it is. It's just the different way that consciousness has structured energy, and how that energy then sits at a vibration that gives us different levels of dimension or different levels of perhaps existence. But they're all really, they all overlap. They're all connected. So anyway, hopefully that some of that is will give a little bit of clarity on higher vibration. Um, Again, I'll be the first to admit a lot of that is a little out there. That can seem very esoteric, but that's kind of the nature of what we're doing with this group, right? We're focusing on the esoteric and the spiritual. So I would say at the very least to consider some of what I talked about, and beyond that, I would also ask all of you in the group to don't seek the higher vibration. Okay, that does not mean you're doing better at your spirituality. That does not mean you're doing better at life. Okay, this is the life that we all have, and we have power, I think, to make this as best as we can, and to live a good life regardless of our circumstances, right? We want to make sure that we continue to live with integrity and that we do everything we can to be compassionate and kind, to each other. But none of that is necessarily associated with a higher vibration. That really has a lot more to do with just the level of consciousness that we sit at, right? So our human consciousness. So anyway, that's enough blather. If you have any questions on some of what I have talked about, please go ahead and post those in the comments, okay? And yeah, and I'll be happy to try to go in and answer those. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope everybody is having a good day, night, whatever time it may be where you're at. All right. Thanks so much. Okay.